Okay, now I guess we're ready for the demo. Rod, you want to step up here?
All right.
A couple months ago, I imagine by now, I called Rod and I said, I just saw a great idea for a Christmas toy. And he said, so did I. And I said, it's a Tic Tac Toe Box. And he said, yep. We both seen the same thing. The AAW was doing that review of some of the original members, and one, I can't remember which member it was right now, but in the background of one of his photos was this box, and we both saw it and thought how nice that would be to make for one of our toys, because it's something that can be used by girls and boys, and it's got other uses.
I think for a high treasure box for kids, how long after the marbles are lost, I think it'd be a neat thing for kids. So, and seeing as how we're a turning club, we thought, what a great idea. So,
yeah. So we've been working on this, trying to make it relatively quick and easy for us to make. There's so many ways of making a lidded box, and we'll go over some of those tonight. The first thing I did was we didn't have any dimensions, so I just made one. The fit on this lid is just a little loose, but I made that, and I soon found out that's not big enough. You don't have enough room to put marbles in each of those spots. So we went to this bigger size. The club bought a piece of fur, and that's what this is made of. And the only problem with fur, or one problem with fur, is it's soft, which makes it easy to cut, but not easy to get a real clean cut. Your tools have to be very sharp to cut a very soft wood. A lot of tear out. But between Rod and I, we've put together some blanks down here, and I think the plan is that Rod's going to close the door, and we won't let anybody out until we give all these away. These are for you guys to take home.
Rod's going to close the door.
Take home if you want, and make one or two or three, however many you want. There's some with the fir and walnut. And then we have a box here with cherry and sassafras. So please help yourself. Some of the cherry has some small cracks in it, so if you don't like the piece of wood, get a different one. And we've got marbles. If you want to take the marbles home and play with it before you give it away, there's I think there's 6 collars in each of these bags with 5 of the collar, and we'll give 10 marbles with each kit. 2 collars, 5 each.
We found that 4 inches was kind of the ideal size. I know there's not a lot of 4-inch stock out there, in my house. So you can glue up stuff. There's many ways to make it. We were kicking around the idea about gluing up different colors, and there's as many ways as there is imagination. But this is just one way that we came up to do it. Jim glued up 4 pieces to make it, or 2 pieces. You can make it with 2 pieces and a piece in the middle. So a lot of experimenting you do with it, and nothing would be wrong. You make it with 2 different pieces of wood with the top with separate pieces of wood. You do it that way. So yeah.
Yeah. The blanks we have are, like Rod said, they're not quite 4 inches. This was a 4x4 at the home center. So you square it up, you end up with about 3 1/4 inches. I think some of them are 3 1/2. The size isn't critical. It just has to be big enough to get those marbles on, and this is probably the ideal size, and it would come out of there without any problem. We knew that some of our members don't have the table saws and band saws and everything to make these blanks. That's why we did it. But as far as making the blank, one of the critical things is it's got to be square. You want the square sides, parallel, a nice square piece of wood, and the end has to be cut pretty square too. because to put the slots in, the way I did it was I set the fence up on my table saw, whatever that is, 1.25 inches away from the blade, and I ran through, and then I turned it and ran through. If you're not square, these lines are not going to look like a grid. They're going to look like a number sign or you know, anything. And I know it's a child's toy, and I keep telling people to remember it's a child's toy. It's going to get chewed on, thrown, kicked. The dog will play with it, but you know, to me, I wanted it to look good too. And then, I guess before I even cut those first 2 slots, I cut these slats, and they're the same width as my table saw blade. And the reason I cut them first was so I could glue 2 in. I made the 2 cuts, glued 2 in, left them dry, trimmed it up, and then cut the other 2. That way you're not trying to piece a little 1-inch section in there. You're using full-length pieces the whole way. And it's surprising when you get to cutting these, you would think, well, that table saw groove is going to be exactly the same from end to end and top to bottom. It's not. And until you start trying to fit a little slit in your saw kerf, you don't realize that. But you have to kind of hand fit these in, sand them a little bit. I glued it in with tight bond. Probably any glue would hold them in. And these are about 3/4 of an inch deep. The reason I made them so deep was the first box we made, we put a tenon like this on each end. So I had this piece of filler here had to be long enough to include the tenon. The method I'm going to show tonight requires 1 chucking, and you can make a box with 1 chucking. What you can't do with 1 chucking is you can't open that box up. Look at the inside of the lid. See how it's curved? It's turned on the inside of the lid. The only way you can turn the inside of a lid is if you chuck that lid. I got to thinking, how many kids, when they're playing marbles, really care if the inside of the lid's turned? So these are fairly flat. It's just sanded. The same way with the bottom. If you wanted to turn that bottom, you're going to have to rechuck it somehow so you can turn it. So there's a lot of ways of making a box. Some people chuck them 3-4 times before they get their box done. This is going to require 1 chucking just 1 time, and I guess we might as well get started. One thing, if you looked at the newsletter, I had a little blurb in there about accuracy, and this is one of the projects where finding the center is fairly accurate. To make it look right, you want the center in the middle of that square. Don't worry about the corners, but the middle of that square. And to get as close as you can, I used a tool that, well, most cabinet makers wouldn't be caught dead with this tool, but I used this tool, which is a homemade tool, and it's a marking knife. And I'm just going to, I don't know if can you see that from the camera there?
Push the number
2. This knife has one edge on it. It's actually a half of a pair of scissors. I have several pairs of scissors that are now 2 individual pieces, and I took one of them, and you can make a cut by following along your ruler. It puts it right exactly where you want it. And yeah, don't leave it move like that. Keep it tight and put it there, and you'll get a nice center on the wood. We're going to use cherry tonight, just because I like turning cherry better than that other stuff. And I'll mark this one quickly. One thing with the fur, you can see the growth rings. Those rings, the little black part is a lot harder than the piece in the middle, and you'll find out when you turn it and sand it, because you'll get a little bit of a Ripley effect sometimes. But also when you put a center punch in it, if you're trying to punch on that, it has a tendency to push your punch, so you got to be relatively careful there. Okay, I'm going to mark this one. If you make your first mark fairly light to get it started, then you can put a little bit more pressure on the next mark. And the back side, we could just guess there. It's not that critical, but since I have the tools in my hand, I'll give myself a mark. And I don't know how many people looked at the picture on the newsletter. This rule is in there, and that rule is one that you want to keep separate from your other rules. You see the word on there, John, that I'm referring to? It says shrink.
Yes.
Shrink rule is used in a foundry. They measure patterns with it because your casting is going to be just a little smaller than your pattern. So it's got that's a 1/8 inch shrink rule, meaning that when it says 12 inches, it's 12 1/8 inches long, and it can screw you up. I found that out. I keep it in a special location. Okay, I've got the centers marked, and I'm going to put the drive end up here, the top towards the drive end, and the reason I'm doing that is so I can put the tenon. I'm going to put the tenon on the bottom, and I want the tenon away from the headstock. It's just a little easier to work. It'd be nice if I could hit that. There we go. I'm turning the speed back a little bit to see. That's slow enough, I guess, isn't it, Bob? Okay, let's get the tool rest adjusted. And I brought a lot of tools with me tonight, not because you need a lot of tools, but because you don't need a lot of tools. And I'll just show you some alternatives. I'm going to use the face shield till we knock the corners off, and then I'll probably take this off so you can hear me a little better. And that could be done with a spindle roughing gouge. I'm going to use a bowl gouge, just because that's what I like to use. When I started, it was about 750 RPM, and then I cranked it up to 1200. I've got a drawer in one of my cabinets that's got a lot of pieces like this in, which is the scrap off of an old project, and I keep them just so I know what size my dovetail is. And this part, before I put it on there. I'll just pop it off for a second. I checked it, and it's just about the size of that square. So I know when I get this round, I can put my dovetail on. I've got the right size. It is not entirely important that this be perfectly round where your dovetail is. The dovetail could be made on a profile like that and would hold just perfect. It's just this piece happens to be the same size as my dovetail on this the chuck we're going to use tonight. We got some feedback on some of our videos, and some of it was people were asking, well, you know, I'm a new turner, how do you hold the tool? And most of us in the audience knows how we're holding the tool, but this bolt gouge, I'm holding the handle down and to the right, maybe about 45 degrees, and I've got the flute twisted about 45. So it's 45, 45, 45. I use that angle because it's easy to remember. It also works. Okay, just a little bit and we'll be round. Okay, that's pretty round. A little flat spot there, but that won't hurt us at all. And what I'm going to do next is put the dovetail on the ends so we're ready to put it in the chuck. I normally just use a skew because I have my skew sharpened to the same angle as my chuck, and it makes it pretty easy. I've got the skew flat on the tool rest, and I'm just using it like a scraper, just pushing it in gently. And I've got a dovetail, and that also gives me a nice flat surface on this edge to butt up against the chuck. Okay, the chuck's in. We're going to clamp on that and I've probably got about a 3/16 deep dovetail. You don't want your part to bottom out in the chuck. The support should be on this surface here. Nelson's there hoping I run out of travel before I get it tight. Yeah, that's good. one thing I should have done before. Okay, lines up good. That's nice. I'm just going to use the tailstock till I get my a little bit of work done here. See, we'll just dress that outside up one time, make sure it's nice and round. You hear that noise at the end? That's at the other pieces of wood where you're going across the end grain of the pieces. Yeah, that's good. Now on the end here, which is the top, we have the marks from the drive center. So we got to take at least that much off the top. And there's a lot of tools we can use for that job. Like I could have used this same gouge. You sometimes get a better finish on a surface like that with a traditional ground bowl gouge. Doesn't have the long swept back corners. And we'll just see what we can do here. Yeah, I still have my center marks there. I'm going to have to take a little bit more off, and my tool is just a little above center, which it looks like with this tool post it's going to remain a little above center. I'm down as far as it'll go. Okay, I still got a little more. I'll show you how we could be using this tool if you were so minded to use the swept back bowl gouge. Some people just bring it right across here like this. Yeah. That looks pretty good. Another technique a lot of people like to use on the top of end grain turning is to use a skew chisel as a scraper, and I'll show that too. Skew chisel works real well. You're just going to take those little wisps off. You're hardly applying any pressure at all to the turning. The pressure I'm applying is just down on the tool rest. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I can feel it's not quite flat. I'm going to take a little off the outside portion I like mine, if anything, to have a convex surface. So we just take a little bit off the outside here. Then I want to break the edge, and to do that we'll just use this bowl gouge, and I'm going to turn it like I was rolling a bead. Just go right around the corner, and we don't need much, just enough to keep somebody from cutting their fingers. Now the way I do the one chucked bowl is I'm going to cut a fairly wide groove here. Let me go over here to the board, and we have our chuck and the dovetail pieces are in the chuck. You can finish that part, Rod. Anyhow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a fairly wide groove in the diameter of this, and then I'm going to part it off, leaving just a little bit of a shoulder here. And this top, at that point, when I part it off, the top will be finished. I'll sand it before I part it off. And I'm leaving this shoulder here so that when I hollow the bottom out, I'll keep getting bigger and bigger. When that shoulder disappears, that's told me I've got the right size. We're very close to it. At least it tells me to slow down when I get close to that shoulder. So we'll cut a groove in here to start parting it off, and then we'll do a little sanding and then finish parting it. Trying to make this as true as I can, and I'm just going to knock a little bit off these corners. Might have to do that again after we sand. And now I'm ready to sand, and that'll be the first time I've tried this tool, so we'll see how it works. Nope, not yet. I still see just a little flat on the surface here. Better take that off. And I'm making this straight wall. There's no need to make it straight. You can make any form you want. But when you make this this cut, you got to remember whatever the diameter of this is, that's what the hollow is going to be. That's why I'm going in there about I don't know, not quite a quarter of an inch. That's going to be what my wall thickness is at the top on this outside. And I'll just hit this with a little paper. Probably slow it down a little bit. Joe, do we have Fairchild's DVDs in the library? Russ
Oh, yes, look,
Fairfield, yeah. He's got a really good bunch of DVDs on finishing, and one of the things he emphasizes is slow is good and slower is better. So I'm running about 600 RPM, which isn't extremely slow, but it's slow enough that I'm not overheating the sandpaper. You don't want to get your sandpaper hot.
that DVD on Russ Fairfield, we have it here in this excellent DVD. I've seen it about 10 times. And he really goes in depth.
Okay, this piece does have a little bit of a crack in. Hopefully it won't cause us a problem. I could keep sanding this till it was perfect, but I think everybody understands the sanding process. If you don't, get Russ Fairfield's DVD. Okay, what I'm going to do is part this lid off, leaving just a little bit of a tongue there, and I'm using a 1/4 inch parting tool. We could use an 1/8 inch if you were doing this for a different type of box and you wanted the grain to match real well. You'd probably want to use a smaller, as small as you could, so you didn't miss some of the grain, especially if it had figure in it. One thing I'm going to try to do is just get in here a little bit and sand that. You won't be able to touch the underside of this on the lathe after it's taken off. Sometimes you have to widen your groove a little bit. It starts pinching on your parting tool. I'm going to take this down to what's about 1/4 of an inch wide, maybe a little less. Okay, that's a little less than 1/4. You can part it completely off, but what happens on an end grain turning is sometimes it'll pull that grain and you end up with a hole in one side, and that's a real pain to sand out. So I'll just saw that little bit off. And I do have a fair amount of torn out grain on here, which we will address in just a few minutes. Who thinks they're good with a chisel? Bill volunteered. We have Band-Aids up here. No? Okay, I'll get it in a minute then. I'm going to take that little nub off with the chisel, and right now we're ready to start hollowing. And Rod and I had quite a discussion over how to do the hollowing. Your idea was a 2.5-inch Forstner bit and just go down and be done. And that would work. I don't have one that big. I might, but you could also use a smaller bit, even a 1-inch bit. But end grain turning, in my mind, goes nice if you have some kind of a hole. So what I'm going to do is face this off and mark a center. Let's see, we'll use this. I don't want to just put a little mark right in the center to start my drill. Oh, what was the other way we were talking about, Rod? We were saying you could drill with a spindle gouge. I know I've done that before. You just take a spindle gouge on your tool rest, and it acts like a spoon bit. But tonight we're going to drill it with a hand drill like this, and it's got an adjustable collar. Some people go real high tech and use a piece of tape. So other people just hold their finger there. I'm going to leave a little bit up against the chuck to protect my tool, and then we got about 1/4 inch plus some waste, and I'm going to be drilling from here. That's really not too bad. I'll just leave it go at that depth, and we'll drill a hole. I'm looking at this speed readout because some people like to know what speed we're using, and I've never checked on my drill at home. Oh, that's really wobbling, huh? Let's get a little bit, make it wobble faster. And the reason you drill a hole is there are several reasons. One, it gives your tool a place to start, and for this type of turning, we want to turn from the inside out as opposed to a face grain bowl. It's end grain. And the other thing is, with a depth mark with the drill, whenever I get rid of the drill mark, I know I'm at the right depth. I don't have to worry about going too far. A lot of people take your tailstock off the lathe when they do this, just to avoid hitting it with their elbow. This can be done with a spindle gouge or a bowl gouge, and I imagine if you wanted to, you could do the whole thing with a scraper. We'll use a scraper in a minute to clean it up. going to look in there and see if I'm down to the bottom of the hole. And it looks like I got about 1/4 of an inch to go. And I'm hoping the camera doesn't get a good view of the inside of that lathe. That is pretty rough, but that's okay. I'm starting to get real thin on that little rim that I left. So I'm slowing down near the outside.
You undercut that any on the inside there for your lathe, where your lathe goes?
No, I leave it straight. That gives it a little bit better chance at a friction fit. But I was just checking to make sure that I wasn't undercutting it. Still have a little bit in the bottom to get out. Okay, you see that? It's just starting to come off. I'm going to check with my lid just to make sure it's still small enough. It's going to fit nice and loose. So they won't have any trouble getting this lid off at Christmas time. The tool I usually use to bring that out to size is a side scraper, and you just bring that in from the flat on the tool rest. It's also sharpened on the end. I can take that little bit of a lip off there, touch it, and I'm going to go in the inside with a scraper. This one should be good to just clean up those edges. And give a nice surface on the bottom. You can make the profile of the inside of this, anything you want. I was making mine kind of rounded because I thought that's nice to get the marbles out. But you can go right down the side square into a square corner or a small radius corner. A little bit more here. This tall tool rest is working good for the scraper. It forces me to have it angled down, which is where you want it. Okay, I just have a little bump down in the bottom I want to get rid of, and I'll be happy with the inside. This is where you try 3 times, and the 4th time you take it too far, but that's... What I was seeing was just the point of that drill, and I wanted to get that out. Okay.
Well, actually, if you just go a tiny bit deeper, it won't matter.
It won't matter, I got plenty. Now I don't have the point of the drill, I have that little tip that you see most often in the bottom of a bowl. So I'm just going to go underneath it and bring my scraper up through it. All right. Okay, we're going to say that's done. If I was home and making a bunch of sanding dust, I use an electric drill and this size Velcro pad on the inside. And you can get in there while it's running and get a really nice finish on it. But for the demo tonight, I'm not going to put any more sanding dust in the air. That probably been enough for everybody. I might put a little more sanding dust when I show how we do the bottoms. Okay, I'm ready to part off the bottom, and I'm going to try to get as close to the chuck as I can within reason. And again, I'm going to have to make it a little wider than what the tool is. I'm just chamfering the bottom corner there. Trying to touch the bottom of the, trying to get a smooth cut on the bottom of this. It's very difficult when you're using a parting tool. But we'll sand that in a minute. Okay. And it's time for the saw again. And the bottom looks terrible. It's not a good cut at all, but that's because of the way I was doing it. If you have a belt sander at home, just hold this up against the belt sander and finish it. We're going to finish it on the lathe. Let's see. Take this out. Has anybody ever here got their chuck stuck on their spindles? I heard some people saying they have done that before. I saw a tool at the in Waco that a guy was using to get his chuck off. It's one of the cross lug wrenches. He opened his chuck up, put it in there, and it gives you a lot of leverage. I normally don't need that much leverage to get my chucks off. Get the lock there. Uh-oh. Rod, see if there's a wrench for this chuck up there in the back.
Right here it is underneath that.
That big one?
That lathe.
That won't fit. I need something for that. You talking about this guy?
Yes.
That's for the adapter. Might be in here. What happened was my insert on the chuck stayed on the spindle, and if there's one thing I didn't bring, it was that. Might be able to use this and this. Here, Rod. I'm going to lock this. You're going to need both those tools.
Is it in there?
Yeah.
Let me hold it this way, Rod. Put your wrench over for you. I want to come in here.
Oh,
I want to cut this from here a little bit more. There you go.
Okay. All right. Thank you. What I do to finish the bottom is just use a Jacob's chuck and a little sanding pad.
Now, if you had the big jaws, you could use, put your piece in that. And if it's all big jaws or something, ones with the rubber.
Oh, the coal jaws. I think that's, yeah, I guess you could. Oh, I know where my sanding discs are. Right here. And then right now it's just a matter of taking your time and sanding the bottom off like that. I'm not going to go through the whole sanding process. I think you can see the idea. You end up with a nice box with only one thing left to do, and that's to drill the holes in the top. Now the one in the middle is easy to put in. It goes right where that little dimple is from your chuck. But the ones on the outside, what you end up with is they end up closer than what you would think looking at this spot. If you don't put them fairly close to the center, you run out of space out here. So you'll find out. I took a pencil and laid it out a couple times so I got it right, and then took a I used this centering bit to drill my holes in mine. The next one I make, I'm going to try that round. Go in with the center first and then just kind of round it out. I don't know if it'll make any difference or not, but is there any questions on what we've done?
Where'd you get those tools out there?
The carving tool.
Is there-
Well, the chamfering bit, I think you can get those at any machine supply place. The round burr came from a carving supply place. I forget which one it was, but It's used for wood carving. You could just use your drill if you wanted to. Just put a drill point in it. All you need is a place to keep the marbles from rolling.
When you sand at the bottom off, is that just to keep it perfectly flat, or do you try to concave it?
I usually try to concave it. This one, I haven't sanded enough to get it concave yet, but if you look at the one we had here, pass that back, John, please. I put a little concavity in that. I like that. It keeps it from rocking. Do you think a 5-year-old kid's going to care if it rocks? Probably not. But anything else? Okay, that's it then, guys. Thank you.
Really nice